Welcome to another episode of Home Sweet Home. My name is Rod McCall.
And I'm Scott Nichols.
Well, how the heck is life treating you on this fine day?
I'm doing great. It's a wonderful weekend. I'm just enjoying life right now.
Well, that's good. I have to say, we went to that football game last night, and my first high school football game of the year.
Mine too.
It was, it was very interesting seeing all the community that was there. The high school kids, sure, but all the little kids, the middle school kids, the grade school kids. Heck, I even saw tons of grandparents showing up. Quite impressive.
Yeah, community events are great. Brings people together.
And the number of people that are involved in high school football goes way beyond just the kids on the field playing the game.
Sure. Well, I have to say, in Texas, it's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, I haven't experienced this kind of level of involvement anywhere else in the country.
No.
That I've been to, but Texas is, it's an atmosphere that's closer to college football than it is to what I remember high school football being, which is incredible. It's great for the kids. The football programs are well supported, and the stadiums are just amazing. Lots of fun.
Even those that are considered old are very much like a college.
Yeah.
Never mind the new ones that they're spending god-awful amounts of money on. But
I definitely recommend if people are like vacationing in Texas, like go experience one. Let's just, buy a ticket to a high school game. They're cheap and it's a different experience.
Yeah, when you're not too concerned with who wins, who loses, it can be even more entertaining watching parents.
It's definitely an experience in Texas.
No kidding.
So, hey, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I've been working with a lot of kids here lately, dealing with a variety of things, and it got me thinking about expectations. And, our expectations, whether we're a kid, whether we're an adult, doesn't matter. Do we have realistic expectations?
Definitely. I'm going to have $1 million by next week.
Okay, perfect. Well, remember your podcast partner. Throw a little cash this way. But now I got thinking about how we might apply our expectations to our relationships.
Oh, okay.
And whether it's a work relationship or, like your relationship with your job, or with your family, your partner. We have tons of relationships, and it got me thinking about just what are our expectations?
Right.
And, Sharon keeps telling me, well, if you lower your expectations, you'll be less disappointed.
Ah, okay.
But I don't know that I can do that all the time. And
I'm not sure you can do that ever.
No.
And that's fine, right? I don't think we should lower our expectations.
I
think we should have realistic expectations. So maybe ours are too high and you might need to lower them a little bit.
Well,
but for most people, right? You don't want to go down to a point where you're hooking up with somebody that's doesn't have any of your beliefs or values or any of those things.
Well, yeah. And sometimes, so they got me thinking about, well, okay, where do the expectations come from? If we're going to set expectations.
TikTok.
Okay. How much does social media, how much does media as a whole? Social media, mainstream media, TVs, movies, advertisements, whatever. The Facebook reels, the TikTok reels, the Instagram reels. How much of those play an impact on helping us shape our own opinions and expectations of what these kinds of relationships should be?
Unfortunately, I think that social media plays a huge role in shaping our political opinions, our personal opinions about each other. I even find it unfortunate that when I hear individuals talking about choosing people based on their politics. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you're severely limiting yourself to just a half of the group of people around you, and I mean that this is stuff that didn't generally matter in our households.
Yeah.
In the past, like you could believe different things, and that was fine. You didn't talk about it; you just went and voted.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, people are actually choosing partners based on politics.
Yeah. A lot of times it feels like our identity is attached to things that might create more problems than they resolve.
Right.
And what you like you're saying, whether it might be a political ideology or some kind of whatever it might be. And as we set these expectations for ourselves and others, how much joy does that bring? How much stress does that bring?
Mm.
And so I ran into an article that, it's a couple years ago already, but it was talking about how a lot of times, whether it's the books we read or movies that we see, or again, what we see on social media, that, well, this is what perfection should look like, or this is at least, look at all these happy people, look at all these happy couples, and, well, this is what I need to have in my relationship.
Sure.
And like I said, we've done some stuff about work. We've done some stuff, about our jobs and things like that. But I thought, well, let's take a look a little more into our relationships with our family.
Okay.
And in particular, maybe that person that is most close to us.
Okay.
So for me, that would be Sherry. And do I have unreal expectations of what I believe our relationship should be?
Okay. Should we call Sherry and ask her?
No, she's busy.
Okay.
Even if she wasn't busy, she's busy.
All right.
But and it got me thinking, okay, and as I was reading through this article, if we have unrealistic expectations, what kind of potential problems could that create between you and your partner? And so one of them that the article addressed, and I thought, ooh, this actually was kind of true, because when I think back to my relationship with Eric's mother,
right,
and I think both of us had a different opinion of what marriage was supposed to look like.
Right.
And for me, it was more like my mom and dad, where it was equal collaboration, communication, and they worked together to address and solve issues. In her mom and dad's marriage, it was mom was in charge, mom wore the pants, and dad said, yes, dear.
Right.
Well, she expected me to be basically a beta dog and go, yes, dear, just like her dad. And I'm going, I'm not your dad. That's not me. I have a voice, and I will share my thoughts and opinions, and it will not be your way all the way all the time.
Yes, you will.
Yes. And so I think both of us in our unrealized push or expectation of what the relationship should be, it led to strained communication between us.
Okay.
And if there's one thing that I've learned, you got to be open. You got to be able to talk and express, and not only how you're feeling, but you got to be willing to listen. And I think we've talked about this many times before. Listen to understand.
Sure.
And if we're not listening to understand, well, then the communication reaches a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're saying that if these unrealistic or these unrealized expectations that you want with your significant other isn't happening, well, it's because we're not communicating very well.
Sure. So that just means you have different you have different expectations and none of them align?
Well, it could be that you're not communicating those expectations.
Okay.
You're just getting angry. And so instead of saying what's going on, what you're thinking, what you're feeling in a way that does not create conflict, then you can get to a resolution. But if you are holding that in, you're angry, you're pissed, and your communication lashes out, then you're creating a conflict. You're starting a fight.
Okay. So there's a self-reflection that's taking place. Is that what we're?
Well, if there's not, then this is that strained communication, and now instead of talking to each other, you're yelling at each other, you're insulting each other, you're belittling each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of that's how I'm interpreting what they're trying to communicate here. And based on my experiences, that was true. She never really, we talked about it before we got married, and we were both, quote, in alignment. But as rubber meets the road, it became clear that things were different. And after she graduated with her PhD, we got our jobs down here in the Dallas area, and she started making a lot more money than I did. Well,
Mm-hmm.
her attitude, her expectations of what our relationship should be began to change and adjust.
Right.
And she was not communicating, I guess, in a way that I understood. Looking back over because that was 15 years ago, I can see now more of what was going on and what was happening. At the time, I sure as heck did not.
Sure.
And so I think, again, we developed two different ideas of what relationships should be like.
So, and I think that's part of it. I think self-reflection is important here. I think that, if we're communicating and it's not being communicated well, then we need to reflect on what do we actually believe, what are our values, what are our desires, what are we looking for. Reflect on that so that we can try to better communicate those expectations.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
But we have to understand them ourselves. We can't just lash out and be like, I was totally expecting you to have dinner ready every night.
Yeah.
When I got home, but we've never talked about that. And I hadn't realized it's not possible because you have a job too. And
yeah.
Right. I mean, those kinds of things.
And you throw in kids and activities and all different things that create distractions or consumption of our time.
Sure.
And so what ultimately can happen is emotional distance.
Yeah.
You begin to move away from each other. And then the communication that does take place is even more strained.
Mm-hmm.
And so your idea of what you're expecting from this relationship is continuing to fall apart.
Right.
And so this emotional distancing then can be kind of a snowball effect.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that they also mentioned here that I again, knowing from my own experiences, you can have an unhealthy comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is where outside influences come into play most, beyond just familial. I think, again, like you were saying before about social media, what we see on, how about this? When was the last time you saw somebody upset, angry, or in a pissy mood on any social media
Right.
platform?
Those are generally not like reels that we're going to make. Right?
No.
Because it's going to attract a negative attention that we don't want.
Mm-hmm.
What we want is for people to see our relationships and our lives as perfect. And so that's what everybody tries to portray on social media, right?
Mm-hmm.
My life is rosy. Here's the food I'm eating. I'm super healthy.
Mm-hmm.
All the things. And, probably there's a lot of half truths associated with those things. But we see that. I mean, look at all the influencers, right? They're not putting out negative stuff. They're putting out funny stuff. They're putting out lighthearted stuff. They're putting out things that make them look like they're having wonderful lives. And frankly, some of them have died horrible deaths. As lonely people. Social media is a lonely place, and we bury ourselves in it. And we compare ourselves to it, and then we end up comparing our relation, even if we have physical, or real relationships in the real world with other couples or whatever. We often compare ourselves to them and what we see of them. But there's closed doors in everybody's relationships. And we keep a lot of that behind the closed doors.
Oh, absolutely.
In the same way that individuals keep their feelings bottled up and out of public view. And so we don't know if they're depressed. It's the same kind of thing. And so we hide a lot. And, the videos and the photos and all the things are touched up and edited and made to look perfect, just like movies.
Oh, yeah.
And, soap operas and all the things, right? It's all a big production. To ultimately make you feel terrible about yourself.
It can.
And that's kind of a lot of what happens. People compare, and it's like that's an unattainable goal.
Yes.
And we have to shut ourselves off from some of that, or at least realize that that's fake.
Yeah, and I think that sometimes that can be hard to do.
Yeah.
And when you're comparing this, it contributes again to these unhealthy expectations. So, and it creates a whole host of other problems that, again, I will continue to say this. You got to talk. And you got to communicate, because if you don't communicate, you keep it bottled up, it creates frustration, it creates anger and hostility towards each other. And so.
And I think that needs to happen verbally, like face to face, and not like texting each other while you're sitting on the same couch. I mean, seriously.
No, I'm with you.
Seriously, that's where people are at, is they're buried in these devices in a way that they're not interacting physically and communicating in that way. And so I think we're losing some of our social skills of face-to-face communication. And, I don't think that's a good thing for relationships or for society.
I totally agree.
You need to put the device down and speak directly to each other and have a dinner with each other without devices, and have, sit down and watch a movie together without devices and all those things. I think that's really interrupting our ability to even have a healthy view of life, which leads us to unhealthy comparisons.
Yes. And it kind of, as I'm preparing to take my counseling exam, my state board examination, I keep coming up and I'm running into a guy by the name of Carl Rogers. Now, Carl Rogers is a psychotherapist that goes way back, been around for a while, popularized what they call person-centered therapy.
Yeah.
And I used this summer working with the kids at the internship place I was at. And we talked about that there are basically two selves that we present. We have what we call our self-image. All right, this is what we want to be. And then we have, or this is, I guess maybe self-image, more like this is who we are. Okay, this is us, our real authentic self. And then we have the ideal self. This is who I'd like to be. This is who I project to the world that I am.
Yeah.
And when these overlap a lot, then this is what Roger says is congruence. And that means that you're who you are and who you want to be for the world to see are pretty close.
Right.
And it leads to less stress, less anxiety, less depression, and your ability to work well with others goes pretty good.
Okay.
And that includes your relationships at home. But if they're far apart, there's not a lot of overlap between who you really are and who you project to the world who you are. Well, then he identifies this as incongruence. And that leads to a whole lot of stress, anxiety, and depression because you're trying to be what you cannot be. And so when we apply that to this relationship, all right, well, the idea of your ideal self, who you want to be, well, that's who you want to be in this relationship versus who you are, who is really in the relationship.
Okay.
And so as a result, when you're able to kind of reconcile, then you can provide a little more happiness at home.
Mm-hmm.
And you can address those potentially unreal expectations.
Okay.
And in fact, the article had a kind of a fun quote from William Shakespeare. And it says, "Expectations are the root of all headaches."
Oh.
And I thought, there's some serious truth to that.
Wow.
And so what they're saying, and I kind of you'd already hinted on this or led this direction, the way that we can kind of reconcile this, the way that we can find some resolution to make our relationships a little bit better, a little bit happier, goes to what you were saying before, self-reflection.
Yeah.
We got to look at ourselves. We got to look at our relationship. Why is it not working? Right. What is my part in this? When we were doing our divorce group, that was the one big thing that we were constantly, people would come in, well, what was your role? What did you do? We've been hearing you say all the things that your partner did.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do? What was your contribution? Because it takes two to fight. And even if it was a small amount, you still played a role in the breakup of your relationship.
Right.
And so this self-reflection before you get to divorce, or before you get to the breakup stage, do a little self-reflection. What you were saying.
Yeah. I'm thinking here about also, what are your expectations? Is your expectation to have a real partner, meaning somebody who has some differences from you and helps make you a better person, and they a better person? Or is it just to have a roommate that completely agrees with you on absolutely everything, and it's this kind of sterile relationship? Where's the fun in that?
Mm-hmm.
My wife and I, we've almost 32 years married now, together 33 years. And we didn't agree on everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I've adjusted some of my beliefs and she's adjusted some of hers. And we've, worked our lives together in a way that makes us happy for the most part. We're not millionaires, and that would be an added benefit. But most people don't get there, and that's okay, right? But we enjoy the same things now, and we have a pretty good life together, as far as what we like. But if I was out saying, "Oh, I want somebody with exactly the same political views and exactly the same this and exactly the same that, exactly as me," do I want to date myself? Or do I want to have a little bit of somebody who's just a little bit different and brings that kind of spice to the relationship and has some different ideas? Challenges me and makes me a better person. It's the same thing with reading books from people that you might disagree with, just to get another perspective, to seek to understand, to do those things. And I think this is where social media is killing us, because it's all, you look at something and then the algorithm forces you to look at the same thing and the same thing and the same thing and the same thing, and you're brainwashed into whatever that thing is that you already believed, and got that echo chamber.
Exactly. I was about to say that.
And so, it kind of pollutes maybe your expectations and what could be out there, right? I'm looking at the other quote that's in here, right? The best things in life are unexpected because there were no expectations.
And I think that's always what Sherry was trying to say.
Yeah.
She has shared that thought to me many, many times. If you lower your expectations, you will be less disappointed. And I think that's kind of what she's saying. And I totally agree. And that's kind of where the suggestion of do a little self-reflection, figure out, okay, what are your expectations here? What do you really want?
Right.
And then share that. As you were saying, have a sit down where you're kind of where emotions are not involved as much, and you can have this open communication and you can have open dialogue about this is where I see us at, and this is where I would like to see us go.
Right.
And listen to your partner and let them kind of go, okay, well, this is where I see us at, and this is where I would like to see us go. And
I think maybe I'd like to offer up a different tone rather than lower your expectations.
Okay.
Maybe broaden your expectations. What are my expectations? Well, I want to be happy. So I think that a more broad, expectation is better, right?
Sure.
I mean, I can travel, but I'm not saying exactly where we're going to travel. I don't care where I travel.
Sure.
So, I think that's important to have some broad expectations and then drill down together and come up with what are the specific expectations.
Exactly. I mean, you're in essence accepting the other person for who they are, where they are.
Yeah.
And as you practice or engage more in that acceptance, which I think is what you were just saying,
sure,
then it'll help us let go of these unrealistic expectations that probably both partners have.
Yeah.
And as a result, you can move from this projected ideal self that Carl Rogers talks about and kind of merge that with who you both really are.
Right.
And as you kind of move more together and reconcile that, then your relationship can be actually maybe happier, more fulfilling for both of you.
Yeah. I think the closing comment that I think I'd like to bring up is they talked about embracing authenticity, and we talked about self-reflection. We talked about open communication.
Mm-hmm.
And I think practicing acceptance is important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Making sure you accept your partner. You don't have to always agree on everything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people realize that. You can disagree, and that's fine, right? I mean, you can disagree, particularly in politics, right? Actually, I mean, I'm not sure if people realize it, but Democrats and Republicans can actually get married and live happy lives. You don't have to talk about politics all the time, and you can disagree, and that's fine, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's good ways to do that, but you have to accept them, right, and foster that deeper level of communication and connection and growth.
And I think if you can do that, that'll make your relationship better for you.
Yeah.
For both of you.
I think the letting go of trying to change that person.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that you got into a relationship with them because you liked them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make them into somebody you don't like.
Thank you.
Right.
I cannot tell you how many times you hear about one person saying, well, especially the woman, and saying to the man, well, I've invested too much time to mold them into who I like.
Right.
Well,
and if it's one of those things where I like that person, but they just need to change this. No, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Just let the person be who they are. That's why you liked them in the first place.
Because nobody's perfect.
Right. And differences are good, right? I mean, there's those opposites attract, all those kinds of things. I mean, differences are good. It makes us better people. It helps us grow. It helps us become, better people throughout life. Gives us great experiences. And, you don't have to agree on everything.
Thank you. Exactly.
Celebrate those differences, and do things with that the other person wants to do. And you may not love it, right? I mean, there's lots of people going to football games. They don't love it, but they do it because their partner wants to. Or you go to that movie despite the fact that you may not love it. You go because the other person likes it, and you do things for each other that way and make it real authentic.
Sounds good.
So,
well,
just a little bit of advice there, I guess.
Advice, suggestions, insight based on a couple of fellas that has been around the block a few times.
I mean, try it, don't try it, but whatever. Let us know how it works out. Either way.
You need to know the name of a good lawyer. I know a few. So
all right.
All right. Well, until next time, I'm Rod.
I'm Scott.
See ya.
Have a good one.